Hello folks, I'm Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One-on-One. We're here on Channel 17 Cox Cable every day of the week at 2 o'clock. Friday, we also are on at 7 o'clock. But that's just, as my jazz-loving brother used to say, that's just the first verse. We are on YouTube. We are on TVSB's website. You go to the on-demand button and I'm at the bottom of the pile. I don't know why. They say it has something to do with being Worthen, but or maybe maybe they're saying it's because you're Worthen. But it's the reason I mention that will even be enforced with our show today, because we're available everywhere in the world. And I once had a guy, I think he's sitting with me, who called from Paris to me and commented on, he had just watched one of my shows. And people all over the country can see it. It's important because the topics we cover and the people frequently have context far beyond Channel 17's footprint on the south coast of Santa Barbara. And we're there forever, as my wonderful granddaughter pointed out to me. She said, you know, you're going to be 200 years from now, Granddad, your great-great-great-granddaughter's going to be as embarrassed by you as I am. And I got to quit telling that joke. She claims that she didn't say that. I say things a lot about my family that they claim I don't remember that. So my guest has been a friend and someone I've done things with for probably now 15 years. And he is now international. He always was. He had a show with I think they had a mock-up of a plane here in the studio, and he had a travel show once. He had a food show. He's a man of many, many tastes, so to speak. But the latest goes beyond all that, and that is international. Arthur von Wiesenberger. Some people call you Nipper.
They do, and some people call me at 8 in the morning, which is awfully early. But Jim, always good to be here. Always good to be on your show. I feel like this is home here, you know. And everything sort of started here at TVSB. It's amazing how this has been the launch pad for many great shows, including Worthen One-on-One, which I know why you're at the bottom of the listing. It's alphabetical, just like I suffer with von Wiesenberger. I'm below you.
I never thought of that.
That's how it goes. But anyway, needless to say, we still are on the
Maybe
top.
we just turn it upside down and you're on top and I'm second.
Yeah, okay. But it's great to be at TVSB because this is great. You know, we have people like Mike Nicholson and JP, Eric Davis, such great people that really are fine-tuning the quality of what's going on here, the quality of these cameras, the quality of the editing and the production value. It's all gone up.
Well, the equipment, but they are the dedicated part of this, you know.
I started here 50 years ago.
50?
50 years ago. Yeah, which is, I think, dating myself a bit. But when
that's when it started.
Well, when Cox Cable had to have a production venue for local productions, I went down when they used to be on Delavina Street, and Ira Opper was the station manager. And I said to Ira, I got this idea for a show called Cinema Scene, where we show clips of movies that are in the theaters at Metropolitan Theaters, and we can talk about it. And Ira thought, oh, that sounds like it would be fun. And I said, I'll have some pretty girls to be on the show with me. I'll make sure they go and see the movie so they can talk about it. And Metropolitan Theater would give us passes to go see the movies.
Right.
and it worked. And Cinema Scene roared along for a year or so, and then I realized that it was also live, so there was no chance of editing or cutting or cleaning things up.
I never have used this show for trade outs, but my radio show, I wouldn't do it for what they paid people, but I did it for placements. And one time I was up to the station owing me $17,000 worth of advertising.
Wow.
I went to the local jewelry store and put down half of the payment for an engagement ring with the placements. I always had a limousine. I always had restaurants I could go to because I gave them the advertising that I'd earned.
Yeah.
So wonderful trade-outs.
Those were the days, but I didn't get anything like that. I just got movie theater passes. But the biggest problem we had was the girls, who were gorgeous, well, that was part of the 70s, you know. They were really cute. Sometimes they didn't go to the movies. And we're on camera, I'm going, well, what do you think? And they're reading the press kit. Well, it's a great movie called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It must be about a bird. We actually did do One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And this is before I got to know Michael Douglas. And it was a great film, if you remember.
I hardly do.
You don't remember One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? That was really brilliant.
About some guy who was crazy?
Yeah. Jack Nicholson.
I was living it. Why should I see it?
You don't want to see it. Anyway, those were the days. But
Yeah.
hey, 50 years later, here we are doing your show, and we're also doing an animal show.
Plan to do it again in 20 years. So
That's right.
And look as well as we do now. International. Now, you told me probably 6 months ago about your outreach for a worldwide, I don't even know what to call it, a channel placement.
Mm-hmm.
A Tubi?
Yes, Tubi TV.
That kind of gave you the desire to be able to go anywhere in the world. Is that right?
Helpful, because Tubi is the third largest streaming platform out there. Figure that Netflix is number 1, Amazon is number 2, Tubi is number 3. Tubi has 80 million active monthly users, and that's throughout the US, Canada, and in some other markets as well.
And a reach of 3 billion, you said?
No, but maybe one day. 80 million is pretty good, though.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
No, I meant the availability to 3 billion people.
Hey, how many people are on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And everybody seems to have the internet. But Tubi gave us the opportunity to really start getting the story about animals out to a much wider audience. And, remember, we started at TVSB, right? We were here. Then Cox came along and said, you could be on Your View channel, which is channel 4, 1004, and that will be, that way you get in other parts of California, down to San Diego. That sounds good. And then they said, how about Nevada, and how about Mississippi, and how about, these other markets, and we kept expanding until we got the entire national Cox network.
Yeah, the last, I would say it's really been the last 3 or 4 years that you've been outside of the California area with your mission and your reach regarding the treatment of animals and finding them forever homes. Did you create that? Who created the term forever home?
I think it's been around for a while, because I heard it early on in this project, and I think that's a great idea, because you do want to have them in their forever homes.
Yeah, well, when I was a rancher, it wasn't called a forever home. It was, you got another dog. Somebody gave it up. It'll be great on your ranch. And they were.
Yeah,
they were.
I bet they were appreciative too.
The greatest little picture, and I can't find it, is our collie laying on the kind of couch on the porch with our cat, but laying on his back, and a hen laying between her legs, because by they being there with the cat and the collie, the rooster stayed away.
Interesting. But isn't it amazing how animals get on with one another?
Oh, yeah.
We had a pit bull, and he got on well with the cats, at least 2 out of the 3 cats. And they used to cuddle up together, and they kept each other warm, and they'd lick each other clean, and it was really kind of amazing. It goes against the common thought that cats and dogs fight. No, not necessarily.
Oh,
The only time a cat's in trouble is if the cat starts running from the dog, and the dog thinks this is a game of tag, and you're it.
Yeah. Well, you never want to have a dog playing with the cat and trap the cat in the hallway.
Yeah, exactly.
All of a sudden, the hissing and the claws, don't come at me.
Yeah.
Even though you're a friend, I know.
But anyway, so yeah, we went international this year. This is the first. We started filming in other markets that we were in,
Yeah.
Texas and Louisiana, and we went to Florida. But I had my sights on other countries because animals are such an important part of so many people's lives. But different places and different countries have a different approach towards animals and animal welfare, husbandry, and all that.
Right.
And I thought, well, it'd be interesting to be able to show that to our audiences. This is how they do it in Romania. This is how they do it in Switzerland or in other countries like that.
Well, and culturally, you run into some anomalies that we hate, like the French and horses,
Yeah.
and the Thais and Chinese and dogs.
Yeah.
It's just so unacceptable to us.
Right. And we try to focus in on the positive, not
Yeah.
on the negative, because really with this show, we want to inspire people to do the best they can for their animal friends and also for wildlife and for barnyard animals. I mean, there's so much to learn, and that was, for me, especially being in Switzerland, that was the big eye-opening experience, was realizing how the Swiss have evolved to a level that I think we'll get to eventually, but we're not there yet.
Well, your shows last year with Monty Roberts reinforced my experience and belief that there's no bad animals. They're bad people. Mm-hmm. And if you treat the animal with respect and bond with it, people say, why do you stop and look in the eyes of a horse and rub his nose? And, he's got to know that you respect him.
Yeah.
Because he could kick the hell out of you.
Yeah. Animals, I was just having this conversation today. Animals know if they're loved. They know if you have an affection towards them, and they respond incredibly well to that. And it isn't just, I was showing you pictures earlier of some owls. Those owls knew that they were safe and we weren't a threat to them. And I'd go and look at them pretty much every day, and they were amazing. Great horned owls are beautiful animals. So I think if animals can pick up, think how animals can tell your pulse. A horse knows
Right.
your pulse when you're walking up to it, so it knows if you're a threat or if you're going to be kind to them.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You mentioned love, and I agree, but also respecting them,
Mm-hmm.
respecting their space and what they're about,
Yeah.
and not trying to, when you finally have to break a horse to ride, doing it like the Whisperer, just don't get up there with spurs and a whip.
No. Violence never pays off on anything, people or animals.
I fired a trainer the first time I saw her. She was bucking and getting kicked around by a gelding that had been gelded late in his life, and still had a lot of stallion in him.
Mm-hmm.
He was gelded at 3, and just bucking and everything. I fired her, and a week later I was riding him.
Wow.
So.
Well, do you want to give a little taste of the international? Because what we have here
I've got a lot of questions about I saw some clips. So
okay, so maybe we should take a look at that.
Yeah.
This is the
Enough about me. I'm sorry.
This is the opening of episode 1 of season 10. So this is our 10th season of doing this show, and it's the opening which kind of just sets the stage as to what we're going to be doing in the season coming up.
Well, Michael Nicholson will do the magic.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and animal enthusiasts around the world, guess what? It's time for AnimalZone. And this season, we're going to go around the world. What do you think about that, Watson? Are you ready for some adventure? You are? You're all ears? Yes, he is, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, and that's your intro.
So that's just the intro where we kind of, in this first episode, we start in Santa Barbara, we go over to Florida, and we go to New Orleans, and then we go overseas to Romania and to Switzerland.
Did you go to, you skipped Texas, you did that.
Yeah.
And you went to Florida and back to New Orleans?
Well, actually went to New Orleans first and then to
Okay.
Florida. I mean,
that's
yeah.
right.
We do
the way I remember
the right way it goes around the world.
I remember, I know you're having some travel.
Jet lag, that's what they call it. No, it was, the idea was we wanted to get people with the think about Switzerland and Romania and give them a little taste of both destinations. But the real meat of those shows is yet to come. I mean, we have 13 episodes that come out in this season. So in the next few episodes.
All in the can, as
editing,
they say?
All in editing right now.
Oh.
I mean, episode 2 will air on the 12th of August, which is probably after this show's already aired. But that's also on AnimalZone.org or on Vimeo. And we have Facebook and we have Instagram and all those other...
All the platforms.
All those little social media things. But you know what was great about going overseas was that you get a different perspective of the world. You know, as you do when you travel. You know, you suddenly look at our little world is different than you would when you're in it. And the same with animals. You look at animals in a different light because the Europeans look at animals in different ways. You know, sometimes they're beasts of burden, oxen, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're producing food, milk, cows. Of course, in Switzerland, that's what you think about a lot. You know, I mean, the hills are alive with the sound of cows mooing and bells ringing. Incidentally, interesting little sidebar. There's been a study that was done in Switzerland about cowbells, because you know when you're in the Alps, you see all these cows walking around and the bells ringing, and all you need is Heidi to come running through the fields and you've got it made. But what they were wondering was, well, do cows actually do well with these big bells? I mean, they're big bells, and they're ringing all the time as they're walking around. And they found that cows are stressed out with these heavy bells around them. And if they take the bells off, then the cow actually produces better quality milk and is more relaxed.
But the purpose of the bell was to find him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do they put a chip in now?
A GPS in the cow.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess.
And the farmer can find their cows in the hills without the stress. And I thought that was, I mean, it's in a way it takes away a bit of the atmosphere of being in the Alps, because you just think of the cowbells as part of the scenery. But hey, listen, I'd rather have a contented cow and great milk.
Yeah.
But we follow cows from when they're in the stalls and being milked to or out in the grass eating the grasses. They're getting milked, and then we follow the milk that goes to a cheesemaker, and he makes cheese and cream and yogurt and all these other dairy products with that milk. And then we go and follow the cheese, which was at this point is called raclette. It's a Swiss type of cheese. We follow the cheese to where it's actually being served, and it's delicious. And yet, you know, you sort of see the farm to table in real life.
I didn't hear any point of pasteurization. And
no. In Switzerland, they don't need to pasteurize stuff because it's all being eaten. You know, within the time that milk is captured and turned into cheese to the time when that cheese is on the table, it's a very short period of time. I mean, I've seen some of those dairy products turning up the next day. Some of these yogurts that they would make right on the spot. Delicious.
How about goat milk?
You know, it's not my taste, but I know some people like goat milk, and they have some wonderful goats up there. They had this very unique goat, which is got silky white and silky black hair, and they produce, I guess, goat milk that the Swiss love. They feel it's very healthy.
Oh, it is.
Do you like it?
Well, I was raised on it for about 2 years, and then it's not genetic. I didn't have any trouble with my mother's milk or regular milk, but my son did.
Huh.
And he lost about 1.5 pounds in his first 2 weeks, and he wouldn't take mother's milk, he wouldn't take formula, we went and got a nanny, milked her every day, and he thrived and gained his weight real quickly.
Wow. Yeah. Well, when we flew over from California to Zurich on Swiss, which has a direct flight, which makes the travel easy. And I had the crew from Santa Barbara, the Conlins. I don't know if you know William and Harleen and Gary Conlin. And they came out with all the equipment, and we rented a big van to move everything around. And then we started filming first in Zurich, which is kind of a great city because there's so many different groups of people. The oldest animal rescue shelter in Europe is right in Zurich. It's called Zuricher Tierschutz, and it was built in the mid-1800s. And it was put together by just some animal-loving people that wanted to make sure that the strays that were on the streets would be collected and put somewhere safe. And actually, as time went along, and as the story goes, the shelter was doing well, and the people who were running the shelter donated several swans to put in the lake. And the idea was they wanted to get across the idea that animals are to be cherished and looked at and admired. They don't have to be doing anything for you, providing food or even being a household pet. They can just be out in nature. And to this day, you'll see swans that are not indigenous to Switzerland on the Lake of Zurich swimming around, because that was this group's idea of put animals out there, people will start admiring animals.
That's
Switzerland.
Truth.
Yeah. So we went up, so I talked to this guy, his name is Nigel Carey, nice guy. And Nigel and his partner said, we have a little farm outside of St. Gallen, which is in northeastern Switzerland. Come up and see us, because we call it donkey paradise. And sure enough, he had dozens of donkeys that he's rescued. He had other animals too, but these donkeys were incredible because they know that they're being rescued and looked after, and they're very smart animals. And they were I went into this gathering with a bunch of donkeys, and the minute they found out I had little cookies, donkey treats, boy, they were, well, everything from kissing me to rubbing up next to me and getting cookies. And I was out of cookies pretty fast.
Well, you have a mule, right?
We have a hinny, which is a type of mule, and we also have a donkey.
So
I'm familiar with donkeys.
You speak donkey.
Yeah, well, the one that was on the camera, his name is Watson, and he's about 28 now, but he's a sweetheart and such a good donkey, really sweet.
It's getting old. I mean, for a
donkey,
equine animal.
Right.
So that was your first experience, not snow and rescue dogs and jugs of brandy and. No.
Our first stuff we were doing in Switzerland was in Zurich, and then we went to St. Gallen, and then after that we went down to Geneva and saw a couple of different animal rescues there that were in the Geneva part of Switzerland.
And their cannons are going from, as far as the government's concerned, from California to Nevada to Arizona.
Yeah. Okay. We ended up going to this hotel, which is a beautiful 5-star hotel in Lausanne, which is about 40 minutes from Geneva, more or less. And what was the attraction at this hotel was they actually have a pet cemetery that they built, because they had residents who would sometimes stay in the hotel for years with their pets and walk them in the beautiful gardens that overlook the Lake of Geneva. So they thought, well, as some of these pets pass, a nice thing to do would have a little stone, a little monument, a little name somewhere in this garden. And I thought that's an amazing step for a hotel to be that sensitive to people's emotions and relationships.
Don't we have a celebrated one in Hollywood? Pet
Yes.
Cemetery.
Yeah, it's called the
And
Los Angeles Memorial.
we used to, I don't know if we still do, had one in Santa Barbara on San Marcos Pass, a pet cemetery.
It's just a nice way to acknowledge that pet and that relationship.
Well,
and a beautiful hotel. If you ever have to go to Lausanne, this is the hotel to stay at. It's right down the street from the Olympic headquarters in Lausanne. And of course, you look right across the lake to Avion, which is where the water comes from, and the drinking bottled water. But anyway, then we out there. Then we went to.
It really comes from there.
Oh yeah. It's a runoff from the Mont Blanc. And they have a huge bottling plant. I mean, they have to because of the amount of water they bottle.
Yeah.
But we went on around the corner into the Rhone Valley, heading towards Zermatt and Wies. But on the way there's a town called Martigny, and it's not stirred with an olive. This is spelled a little differently, but it's where Berryland is, and Berryland is the headquarters of the foundation that looks after St. Bernards. St. Bernards is the national dog of Switzerland. There is a place on the top of one of the passes where it's an hospice. It's kind of like a monk's abbey in a way, right at the very top of the St. Bernard Pass. And it was originally built there. Visitors would sometimes stop there if they were snowed in or whatever and looked after. Well, true story. I was with a group of guys when I was in school in Switzerland.
I was going to say, did you?
I have a story.
All the warrants are from high school.
The high school I was at had this thing they would do called expeditions, and the expedition was where you would get together with a couple of friends, and you would talk with the expedition master and decide where you were going to go over the weekend, and they would have topographical maps, making sure you saw the right places and you camped in the right places and all that. Well, we decided we wanted to do a bicycle expedition, and we wanted to see how far we could go from the school, which was in a town called Villars. We wanted to go into Italy, see if we could make it to Italy and back in one piece. And so the expedition master said, sure, you can do that, but you have to go over the St. Bernard Pass, which is a very high pass. Even in June, it snows up there. As we discovered, as we're going up this long, arduous pass, we get up to the top, and it's already evening, and it's been raining down below, and now it's snowing. We're soaking wet, and we're looking at each other going, what are we going to do? We can't pitch a tent and sleep in the snow. And so we huddled under this archway, which is where this hospice was, where this monk headquarters were, which has been there for hundreds of years. And so we're huddling together, we're freezing, and all of a sudden the door opens, and a monk comes out, and he says to us in Italian and then in French, what are you doing here? And we said, well, we got stuck because we were trying to get over the pass into Italy, but the conditions are so rough, we're just trying to spend the night somewhere. And he said, well, come with me. And he takes us in into the abbey, and there's all these big long tables, and all the monks are sitting there having dinner. And he points to one of the seats, and we sit down, and they bring us some soup and bread, and all of a sudden it was a religious experience for me. It really was. And then they gave us rooms to sleep in. It was incredible.
You got away without getting the brown robe, though.
I didn't have to go that far. But it was really a wonderful experience. And then the next morning we got on our bikes and we rode down into Aosta and got as far as a little town called Ivrea. At that point, we'd run out of time, and so we had to get our bikes and put them on a train and go back home.
Didn't make it to Italy.
No, that was Italy. Aosta is at the top of the St. Bernard Pass. You actually pass into Italy right over the top there. But that's also where the St. Bernards are. And they used to say the St. Bernards would be there to help rescue people who were lost in the snow.
Yeah.
But the brandy, I think that's a little bit of a story. It's not apocryphal, but I don't think it's really true.
And what was the name of the town you started?
Where we started the bicycle ride? Villars.
No, there was one before Martigny or.
Oh, Martigny. That's where the headquarters are now for these for this foundation.
On Bond Street.
Not James Bond. So that was a great experience to see how Berryland and the St. Bernard Foundation has evolved, and of course they have beautiful dogs there. They raise them, and they talk all about the St. Bernard, and they talk about the history of the St. Bernard. They're lovely dogs. They drool a lot, but they're lovely.
Now, yeah, I noticed. Are they still used in the search and rescue even without the jugs?
Not really. There's other dogs that are, I think, more efficient for search and rescue and more manageable. Remember, the St. Bernard's a big dog.
And all the drooling, they probably don't have the sense of smell that you needed to know there's a man in there.
So for search and rescue, we ended up going to Zermatt, which is the most wonderful mountain destination I think I've seen anywhere. That's where the Matterhorn is. Mm-hmm. That's where Walt Disney went when he was traveling through Europe early on before he built Disneyland, and saw the Matterhorn and said, "We want one of these in Anaheim." And we want a Yeti to go with it and a bobsled. But when you see the real thing, there's nothing like it. And our host, when we were in Zermatt, is a man named Amadei Perig. And the Perigs family has had a long history in Zermatt, generations. And his family at one time actually owned the Matterhorn, which is amazing to own a Matterhorn. He personally has climbed the Matterhorn dozens of times, from the top to the bottom, or from the bottom to the top.
Better.
I've only flown over the Matterhorn. I haven't been on it. But
how tall is it?
Oh, it's like 15,000, something like that. It's pretty tall. It's pretty high. Yeah. But what we found and what Amadei introduced us to were the Zermatt rescue team. And what they are now you're filming this for your show. We're filming this for the show. These are specialists who help rescue avalanche victims. And how they do it is they go out with their trained dogs, and the dogs have the best sense of smell because they can find where people are buried under snow much faster than you can find it with the various counters, poles and all. Yeah. And the biggest problem is if you're in an avalanche, in the first 15 minutes, the survival rate is pretty high, about 80%. Yeah. But after 30 or 40 minutes, the survival rate drops down to about 30%. So time is of the essence. And having a dog that can race across the avalanche and sniff out where the people are, they saved 25 people last year that were in an avalanche in Switzerland. And every single one, which is amazing. And so we worked with these dogs. One of them was a Labrador. One looked a little bit like a spaniel of some kind. But they have this great training, great sense of smell, and ability to save people and actually dig them out. So for the show, the guys said, "Look, we'll set up what looks like an avalanche, and we're going to bury you inside the avalanche."
You?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So they buried me inside the avalanche. And I had my little video camera, my telephone camera, and then I was in there and I was yelling, "Help me, help me!" And all of a sudden, I see this nose of a little white Labrador starts digging through the snow to find me.
Is that a picture you have?
We have that footage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was incredible. I mean, Zermatt is an amazing place for many reasons. It's a great place to go skiing in the wintertime. It's a wonderful place to go hiking in the summertime. There's a wonderful 9-hole golf course that is terrific. That's just under the shadow of the Matterhorn. Great hotels, great restaurants. In the middle of town, they move the goats up and down the mountains, and you'll suddenly see 100 or 200 goats going through the town. There's no cars allowed in the town. There's horse and carriages, or there's electric cars, but electric transports.
Golf carts. Sorry.
Even less than a golf cart, kind of very small, but they get baggage and food moved around. But it's charming. It really is one of the great destinations.
So, in this part, you're filming the people who are rescuing and taking care of dogs and other animals, and then people who are training and using them for good. Mm-hmm. How many segments?
Well, there were many more. I mean, for example, Amadei was telling me about something that I'd never heard
Donkeys. I forgot the donkeys. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't forget those donkeys. Amade was telling me about an event that takes place every year in Switzerland, which is called the Queen of the Cows competition. And what happens is there's a certain type of cow, which is called an Ehringer cow. Funny name, huh? This Ehringer cow is very beefy, and they have horns. They don't look like cows. I thought they
Fat
were like
bulls.
I thought they were bulls. Yeah, but they're cows, and they live in the villages all around the canton of Valais and different parts of that region. And what happens is, as they come out in the springtime, these cows battle one another to see who's going to be the boss. And
Naturally, they
naturally,
do.
yeah,
Humans aren't
they've
making
done
up.
this for eons. And what happens is they push each other, and they kind of lock horns, and they push and they push and they push, and finally one gives up, and the winner ends up getting the respect of all the other cows and has certain certain accolades that they get from within the cow world. But what happens is
What are the bulls doing?
I think the bulls are just sitting watching TV or something. I don't know.
NFL's on.
Yeah. The cows are doing all the work, but these cows then are revered by the local village. This is the queen of this cow village, and this cow is the queen of this village, and so what happens is they ended up in this big national competition where all the cow farmers bring their cows.
Do we have
there.
a clip of that?
We have some clips. Yeah, you want to take a look?
I'd like to see some clips.
All right, let's take a look at
I saw
the Queen of the Cow competition and other great things that take place in Switzerland.
the clips that
Yeah.
they audience couldn't hear what you and I were saying behind them, and I was asking questions. Reprise some of those clips and what we were seeing.
Yeah. So we were seeing, of course, the cows I was talking about. You saw the horned cows, and they were pushing each other. Those are the Erringer cows. But we're also, looking at some very unique animals that are unique to that region, like the black-nosed sheep. These are sheep that have black nose, black paws, and everything else is white. They almost look like toys. You look at them and you go, that can't be a real sheep. That's got to be a toy sheep, because they're so perfectly balanced between the white and the black. We also, we're talking about, of course, the St. Bernards, which you saw the two that were there. Those are just two of dozens that they have at Berryland. So if you ever find yourself in Switzerland and you want to get up close and personal with St. Bernards, go to Berryland. It's a paradise.
But no jugs of brandy.
No, but they do have a little cafe where you can order some brandy and experience that side of it. And what we found was that the Swiss are incredibly kind to their animals. They really love their animals, whether they be barnyard animals, their pets, and then even the wildlife. Like this one place we went to, Zürcher Tierschutz, which is this fabulous shelter. They built a new building, a big tall building to shelter these animals in, and it's all a lot of glass. And he said, normally these skyscrapers or big buildings with lots of glass are very bad for birds, because birds will just fly straight into them, because they see the reflection of like trees, and they think it's just as a thoroughfare, and then they hit the glass, and a lot of times they don't survive. Well, they came up with a solution, which is this very fine mesh that they incorporate into the glass, into these big window panes of glass. And although it doesn't affect the view out the window, it makes, for the birds, that this looks like a solid object to them, and they avoid flying into it. And they built the whole buildings with all these big glass panes using this material, and they've had no problems with birds hitting them. And I thought, well, that's a great idea, because I've seen places where birds hit glass, and it's really sad.
Well, our new environmental craze with windmills and solar panels were killing a lot of birds, a lot of animals. It's just incredible. Here in Santa Barbara, they're just licensing a wind mill site outside of Lompoc, and already they know there's going to be a certain number of golden eagles killed there. And, when I first went into radio, it was an endangered species. Outside of Canada and Hawaii, there were hardly any. In fact, I found it humorous that there was a mating pair in the Empire State Building,
really,
in New York. But
where was King Kong?
Yeah.
Looking for Jessica Lange.
Golden eagles. The Air Force was protecting them.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Didn't they go after King Kong?
Yeah, that's it.
The Swiss seem to be genuinely. I've never been to Switzerland. This is my impression, seeing things like you've shown and people on TV and meeting a few Swiss. They seem to be genuinely a nice people. Is that true?
Oh yeah. I think having lived in Switzerland, spent some of my formative years there, and going back as often as I can, I've got to say the Swiss are some of the greatest people I know. It may take a while to become a friend with a Swiss person. They don't just jump into friendships fast, but once you have a Swiss friend, they're a friend for life. And they're so kind and so hospitable, and I can't say enough good things. One of the things that was really fascinating for me was going to this lawyer's office, that this group of lawyers specialize in animal welfare and passing legislation which will make life better for different types of animals, be it domestic pets to farm animals, etc. So I'm sitting in the office. They have the biggest library in the world of animal welfare books. Huge. I mean, walls and walls of books. So I'm sitting there, about to do the interview with the one of the main lawyers, and suddenly the crew looks at me and says, "Do you see what's behind you?" And I went, "What?" I look, and there's a book behind me. It's Monty Roberts' book in German. I'm going, now that is too funny. He is global. But no, it's really good to see the Swiss are really in a leadership position as far as a lot of things. But for animals, if I was an animal, I'd want to be in Switzerland.
Well, political history shows that they were probably the only country that tried to mitigate the Holocaust. You know, Franklin Roosevelt and the Americans didn't, I mean, they turned away ships with the Jewish people aboard. But the Swiss, my study of history is they took them in and gave a pathway to get them to other places in the world. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
I mean, I would imagine it would be accurate, because I know that at one
if
point,
I said it, it's accurate. You're supposed to just say,
"Oh yeah, of course." Yeah. You're absolutely right, Jen. No, one of the things I remember hearing in Swiss history is that you know, Switzerland has lots of tunnels and lots of passes. That's how you get into the Switzerland through the Alps, because it's really surrounded by mountains. And at one point during the Second World War, I guess Hitler thought the fastest way to get to Italy would be going through Switzerland, or going through France, go through Switzerland. And the Swiss said to Herr Hitler, "If one German soldier steps foot onto Swiss ground, we're going to blow up all of our passes and all of our tunnels, and Switzerland will be inaccessible." And I don't think he wanted to do that, because I think he had a lot of his money stored there. So anyway, whether that's apocryphal or not, it sort of shows you what the Swiss are like.
Yeah, the way that Jewish refugees were treated really spoke to, because they didn't just take them in. Many went to Iran and India and other places in the world, and more welcome than Franklin Delano Roosevelt's America. Yeah. Boy, am I being nasty to the Democrats. I love it when there's history for it.
But no, going back to just being in Switzerland with animals, you get a lot of appreciation of how glorious the surroundings are. You have these amazing wildlife, the ibex, the marmots, all these mountain creatures that live there.
The wild ones.
The wild ones.
That was going to be my next question. We know you go into the Sierras, there's brown bears, black bears, now even grizzlies. Mm-hmm. There's wolves that have repopulated. What's the wildlife like?
Well, you have a lot of things, like you do have bears, foxes, and of course, some of the rarer animals like the ibex. Ibex almost became extinct.
What's an ibex?
Ibex is kind of, it looks like a mountain goat or a ram. It's got big horns. It's very sure-footed. It lives on the sides of mountains. You don't know how it can actually stand up, but somehow it navigates across very tricky land. And the ibex, unfortunately, was something that at one point was delicious to certain people in Switzerland and around the cantons, and they were almost extinct. But then there was this fellow who had a lot of land, and he knew that ibex was endangered. This is in the, I think, 1600s, so a long time ago.
1600s?
Yeah, and he managed to capture enough of these ibex to set up a small colony on his land. And he told everyone,
preserve.
This is a preserve, and you're not allowed to hunt ibex here. And as time went on, the ibex repopulated itself, and he slowly started donating ibex to different areas where they had become extinct, with the caveat that they had not to be hunted. And today, now, ibex is everywhere.
California condor.
It's a similar idea,
almost gone. But
we can help animals if we want to take our step. One of the great organizations, and that's right here in Santa Barbara, is the Wildlife Care Network.
I've heard of it.
They're terrific.
I think we have a friend that's
We have a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But the Wildlife Care Network has gone out of its way to rescue and take care of and reintroduce wildlife that's been injured. Most of the time when wildlife is injured, you know why they're injured. It's because of humans, unfortunately.
Yeah. A car.
Either a car can hit them or
shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that wildlife can get injured. What they do is they take in people. The public brings injured animals, whether they be birds or they could be otters. I don't think they do otters. They do opossums. Have you ever seen an opossum?
Yeah.
They're fascinating little creatures. They eat ticks, which is such a great thing. But they have raccoons. They have deer. They have all kinds of pelicans. Do you remember last year that we had all these pelicans that were suddenly grounding themselves?
200 almost.
Yeah. And the Wildlife
Care Network
got a lot of these and managed to get them back to health and then release them.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, releasing them back to where they were found so they can rejoin their families.
I spent some time at Goleta Beach. Now that area that goes toward the sandbar and the river that comes in is closed, but we saw the pelicans, 50, 60 of them laying along had to be rescued. And
yeah. No, they had that hospital they built, the Wendy P. McCaw Hospital at the Wildlife Care Network, which just completed.
I've heard of her.
They just completed that hospital, which was a brilliant thing because people were up until that point looking after animals in makeshift mobile homes or whatever. And suddenly now they had a proper hospital which had all the right rooms and treatment centers and all these pelicans, several hundred of them, were the first arrivals in this hospital. But they all survived and they were released as time went on.
So Monty's book was there. Are there cowboys in Switzerland?
Oh yeah.
People who ride their horses and move animals. And
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Switzerland has an attraction to the West, the American West, because they like the great outdoors and they like a rustic life. Swiss are used to that. I mean, they lived a very humble life for many, many centuries. Now, of course, it's a little more upscale, but the olden days in Switzerland, it was austere.
Is that going way back as they colonized? Is that where the different languages and different canons came in? That people came from Italy, people from Austria, people from France, or is that something more new politically?
Switzerland's always been very regional, and these cantons, I think there's 22 cantons, each canton has its own rules and regulations. I mean, there's still a federal government that passes certain laws that everyone has to follow. But they put a lot of emphasis, probably more than we do on our states, on their cantons. So what works in one canton may not work in another. And because of the language differences, you have 4 languages. Do you know what the 4 languages are in Switzerland?
Austrian, French, German, and English. No, Italian.
Well, you're close. Austrian is also German, so German is that's the number 1 language. The number 2 language is French, which is spoken in the southern part of Switzerland. And Italian, which is spoken on the Italian side of Switzerland. But then there's one other language that nobody speaks, except if you're in that one canton area, the Appenzell area. This is sort of in the heart of Switzerland. It's called Romance. And it's kind of a Latin-based language. It is neither French, German, Italian, but it's a little bit of it all.
I didn't know that. You educate me.
Isn't that? Finally, I can educate them.
I bet people who watch AnimalZone International will be continually educated and enjoying it.
We just hope they enjoy the cows and the mooing and all the rest that goes on.
So where next? We're in our last 5 minutes.
Well, we're going from here. Obviously, this season goes all the way through to November, and then it repeats, and it will go into January. We've got some ideas of things we want to film in California, central and northern California, up towards as far north as almost Mendocino. So we'll probably do some more regional rescues here. And then who knows? I mean, some of our international contacts who like AnimalZone have said, we know they want you in Germany, they want you in Romania. We already filmed a little bit of Romania with the Dog Rose Garden Animal Rescue, which is a great group. Do we have time for this? A couple minutes? So this guy is a wonderful filmmaker, Tobias Futer, and he was shooting a commercial for Swiss Telecom in Romania, because it's very inexpensive to shoot in Romania. And he saw all these stray dogs, and he kept taking pictures of the stray dogs and sending them to his wife, Noelle, and said, "Look at all these cute dogs here." And Noelle said, "They're strays, they're not being looked after." She flew out on the next flight, got out there, and started figuring out how you can rescue these things. And she set up a charity in order to raise money to buy some land to build a shelter in Romania, so these dogs could have a place to be, and then ultimately socialize them and then find them homes. And I went, wow, that's a Swiss charity looking after another country's animals. That's pretty cool.
It is. It is. When you come to California, you're going to do the story of the bears of Yosemite Valley, and how you don't leave food in the car or you won't have a door.
Oh, like the commercial?
Yeah.
No, but we are going to film bears. There's a group up in Lake Tahoe called the Bear League, and they have great stories about bears and bear rescue. Some of these bears end up living under someone's house until it gets a little bit noisy and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've experienced that, and
it's unbearable, isn't it?
And have to tranquilize and put it in a truck and drive it at least 100 miles away, or it'll be back tomorrow because you left too much food around for your dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Yosemite Valley stories are just incredible, how the rangers will catch a bear, take them up to Tuolumne Meadows, 45 miles around to the other side, and literally by the time they drive back, the bear is back at the same place. He came down the canyon, and that's where the food was.
Yeah. They're smart, these bears. They really are.
Good story for AnimalZone.
It
Talk
is.
to the rangers.
I think we might have to do that.
Yeah. I won't tell you the story of the girl in the shorts who only gave the bear half a Hershey bar and put the rest in her back pocket.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, the bear was very articulated and just barely scratched, but took the pants and the candy bar.
So he barely scratched her, and she was bare.
Yeah.
I got it.
And he got the candy bar. That's all he cared
How
about.
sweet it is.
Yeah, there's some great Yosemite stories of wildlife there. When I was young, they had to teach the kids not to feed the deer because the deer literally would die of their intestines, So,
Best not to feed wildlife.
I know.
That's really the lesson.
Yeah, I've known a few human beings like that. Best not to feed them
Either,
They'll
right?
stay around.